this is the 1949 Cave Junction crew, which was my rookie year. And that's the Nordine Norseman airplane that I was telling you about.
Okay.
As I recall, it's a Canadian airplane. And that's the plane we used in the first several years before they got the more modern airplanes that you're familiar with. I think you told me you were, 1968 was your first year?
When I was at Cave Junction, my first year, yeah.
Okay. And so that was obviously after my time. I remember that at Missoula, at your station, in those days, they were used airplanes provided by the Johnson Flying Service, which may or not still be in operation, I wouldn't know. I've been in Missoula a lot of times, but I haven't been at the Smokejumper base. And those planes were considerably larger, like C-47s,
right,
or DC-3s as it were, which I assume is what you used in your rookie years.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. One year, I believe it was 1950, which was my second year, which, by the way, was my last year because I got called back in the Army for the Korean War. But in that year, 1950, for some reason, Region 6, which was our region, as opposed to yours, brought a Ford Trimotor down from Missoula. And I don't know why we were picked, but Freddie Michelotti, who is now dead, and I were picked to jump from it. It was the most damn fun I've ever had in my life. There's no comparison between that airplane and a Nordine Norseman. For one thing, there's no blast. You just drop straight down, which we couldn't hardly believe. For another thing, you can stand up in it, which you couldn't do in the Nordine. And it was great, this big door, and you just stand at the door and go out, And we weren't used to all that. So at any rate, it was a great day. It was just a practice jump for some reason. I think it was because we hadn't been on the jump list for some time. And as you well know, you got to be careful to don't let too much time go by before guys get another jump. But at any rate, that was the airplane we used.
Okay, now Don, let me start this so we get all the right stuff. Now, first of all, why don't you give me your name?
Sure. Donald Earl Wallace.
And then what was your birth date?
September 10th, 1929.
Okay. And do you know that you're being videotaped right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. So, tell me where you were born and where were you raised?
Right. I was born in a little town in eastern Wyoming in Weston County called Upton. The county seat is Newcastle, which is far better known. It's just below Sundance, where the Sundance Kid comes from. At any rate, I was raised on a cattle ranch just across the border, which was founded by my great-grandfather after the Civil War. Those ranches were he had 7 children he brought out from Canada there, originally from Scotland. Those ranches still exist, but they're all owned by one Wyoming family at this time now.
And then, when did you leave that ranch?
1942. And then I went to high school and college in Seattle.
Oh, I see. Okay. And you mentioned that your sister was born in Great Falls?
Yes, sir.
So you were in Montana for a time, or?
Yes. From the time that my father was out of high school until Depression, which was the time I was born, he was on the road with a Singer Sewing Machine Company. And that's why she was born in Great Falls.
I see. So you're familiar with Montana, too?
Oh, yeah. I've been through there a lot of times.
Okay,
One of my favorite places.
So in Seattle, you're there by 42, by the time the war started.
Yep.
So
the war was started. Had already started.
Is that what happened to you next? Is the whole military thing, or?
After I graduated from high school in 1946,
okay.
I graduated in 3 years instead of 4, and 3 days after my 17th birthday, I joined the Army in order to get the GI Bill. The war was over, and I spent 2 years in Japan.
Okay.
And then went to the University of Washington.
Okay, so that takes us up to you're going to the university. So when did you get an idea you wanted to be a smoke jumper?
All my friends were in the forestry school at the University of Washington. And that fall of 1948, the Forest Service, probably Region 6, posted notice at the forestry school for smoke jumpers for the 1949 season, June 49. Because of the fact that I was spending all my time there, Anderson Hall is the name of the school, I made an application, and for some reason I was accepted.
Okay, and so you just went straight to Cave Junction?
Yes, as a matter of fact. As I said earlier, before you turned your camera on, our bosses had all trained at Missoula. And they were all real war veterans, as opposed to guys like me who joined after the war was over. Our big boss had been in all 4 of the European operation jumps. The first one is Sicily, where the damn pilots dropped half the guys in the ocean, you may recall.
Yeah, my dad told me about it. He watched that. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and the next one was at Normandy. And then that stupid operation that was formed by the British leader, which was called
Market Garden.
Market Garden, and then the Rhine jump. All 4 of the jumps. And he was our boss. And our
What was his name? Do you remember?
Cliff Marshall.
Okay.
He's dead now. Of the assistant foreman, one of the guys, Bob Nolan, had been with 101st Airborne, which, as you recall, was dispatched to protect our ass at Bastogne. My favorite boss was R.J. Corson. He was our training boss, and he had been in the Marines in the Paratroopers. He went on to become a see, there I am with my dementia problem.
That's okay. You're doing great.
A district attorney in Umatilla in Oregon, and went on to become a district judge appointed by Governor Tom McCall there. And we've corresponded over the years. He's in his late 80s now, of course. I'm 84. Those were our principal bosses. There was one other gentleman whose name I've forgotten, to tell you the truth.
Was that the first year for the base?
No, sir. The base was originally one of the bases for the, and you'll have to help me with the name, for the conscientious objectors.
Okay.
Just as at Missoula.
Civilian Public Service Corps.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
And those were a great bunch of people. And they were at Cave Junction as well as at Missoula during the war, World War II. 1943, I think it was operating.
So they were jumping during the war?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Right. You will recall probably that we had a problem with the Japanese dropping firebombs in the forests on the West Coast. And for that reason, a military unit of black guys was formed. Matter of fact, they were stationed, as I recall, at Umatilla. Correct me if I'm wrong. And they jumped in those areas as a consequence of the firebombs starting fires on the western slopes, which was kept quiet because the military obviously didn't want people to know about it. But nevertheless, they did. That was the background for Cave Junction before my time.
So when you showed up, how many men were in your how many rookies were there that year?
I'd have to make a guess, of course, because it's been a long time ago. But I would guess there were probably 10 or 15 of us.
Okay. Do you remember the training?
Do I remember the training?
Sure.
Oh, sure.
Tell me
Yeah,
about
I remember training, even though it was 65 years ago. Yeah, you can still remember being beat up. R.J. Corson, who I mentioned earlier, Dick Corson, who ended up being a judge, was our training foreman. And he could just run our legs off. He was great at it. And, he is the one who taught us all the stuff that you were taught. you know, how to suit up, how to get down out of trees, etc. Jump tower, all that kind of stuff. And he's the one who did that stuff.
So, was that about a 4-week training period, or was it shorter?
Again, my memory fails me because it was a long time ago. 1949 was some time ago, but I would say that probably 3 or 4 weeks, something like that, and then we had to take 7 training jumps.
Right. And now, of course, Cave Junction is renowned for the big trees, the big sugar pines and so forth. What was your first experience with that?
Well, first of all, let me mention that southwestern Oregon is renowned in the Forest Service for its variety of trees. At the base, we had a tree called a Pinus jeffreyi, Jeffrey pine, which you won't find very often too many other places. But that was the tree that was at our base. The picture I showed you of the Nordine, those trees behind that Nordine were Jeffrey pine. And there were a lot of other trees that were unique to southwestern Oregon. But yeah, we had sugar pine, you're right. But the pines that were, and these were pines, by the way, for the most part, were not in our jump area. We jumped in a cattle pasture. And while it was surrounded by pines, the pasture itself was clear, as you would expect.
This is for your training jumps?
Yeah, for the training jumps. So we made no training jumps in the boondocks. My first experience with trees was on fire jumps.
Yeah.
And you know, like anybody else, we try to avoid those damn things. I never once got hung up in a tree, fortunately for me.
Yeah.
But we've been trained what to do in the case that happened, of course. We all carried 110-foot ropes in our right pocket of our jump. In those days, we had canvas jumpsuits. Nowadays, they're much nicer. But they were canvas in those days, not very comfortable. But there was a 110-foot letdown rope, which was nylon, as I recall. We were taught how to use it in our right jump pocket.
Now, why don't you tell us why they called the Cave Junction jumpers the Gobi Rats? What was the story behind the whole Gobi thing?
Well, again, it was based on the fact that Terry Fieldhouse, who had named the place Gobi Desert. And so all of us who were stationed there were called Gobi Rats. Although, frankly, I think that term was later, beyond my time, much later, as a matter of fact. I'm sure I'm probably wrong, but I think the Cave Junction site was shut down about 1983, and the whole function was transferred to Redding.
So why